So this has me thinking that we're going to be getting a brand new Uncharted game down the road, because usually when companies re-release and update a lot of their older titles, it typically means a newer one is on the way. So when the last two Uncharted games got remastered for PlayStation 5 as well as PC down the road, and the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection really got me thinking. But we'll talk about that later. We're going to dive right on into the review for this for PlayStation 5. Let's get into it.
This wasn't written with your comfort in mind. Nah. Made my decision, wasn't tough to decide. Nah. Me and my boys, we get it done every time. Gotta earn it, you can't just jump in the line. You'll get rushed to the side. I top my division, I've been building since I started. In the parking lot, I parked it. I came in while picking targets. My career cannot be tarnished. I'm a champion regardless. Celebrate, but this a different kind of lucha party. We are not alike.
Before we kick this video off, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Sony for providing a review copy of Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection for PlayStation 5. I'm really excited to dive back into these because I haven't really played Thieves End or Lost Legacy since they released, I believe was 2016, 2017. So it's been some years since I've actually dived into either of these titles, and I'm really excited to go back and play them again because I really enjoyed them at launch. But after playing the Nathan Drake collection, where it ran at 1080p with 60 frames per second, it made going back to these really hard on PlayStation 4 just because they were running at 30 frames per second. And now with this updated re-release for PlayStation 5 and very soon coming to PC, it being able to run at a native 4K, well, at least on the PlayStation 5, native 4K at 30 frames per second if you put it in the fidelity mode, or if you were to go into performance mode, you can run at 1440p upscaled to 4K checkerboarding and get 60 frames per second. Or if you really want the highest performance, you can get performance plus mode and run them at 1080p 120 frames per second, which is mind-blowing. So it's really, really cool that you're able to utilize those settings to get the best out of the two of the greatest Uncharted games. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So we're going to talk about the performance of the game. I'm not going to really cover the the story or anything like that because you probably already know. I mean, if you haven't already played them, then well, they've been out for years. Go look it up. I'm not really going to be covering the story and the gameplay. I'm really going to be talking about the performance, the graphical updates, and that in itself. So before we kick the video off and we go all the way into that, make sure you sub to the channel. Ding the notification bell that way you can stay up to date on all the latest and greatest content that comes from this channel. And if you want to support the content that I do, head on over to patreon.com/MikhailCasanova or Ko-fi, KOFI.com/MikhailCasanova to support the content that I do, because every little bit goes a long way. Outside of that, if you want to pick up merch, we got merch on Teespring and TeePublic. So just so you guys know. All that being said, let's go ahead and dive into this review of Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection. Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection is a remaster of Uncharted 4, Thieves End, and Uncharted Lost Legacy for PlayStation 5 and PC, which is releasing later this year. These games individually released in 2016 and 2017 for the PlayStation 4 and were essentially the end of the Nathan Drake Saga and shifted focus to his friend and former lover, Chloe Frazier, with her first solo adventure. These games were graphical marvels when they initially released and truly pushed the PlayStation 4 to the limit of what the developer Naughty Dog could do at the time. So why is there a need for a remaster of these two titles? Well, we're going to cover that and more as this review goes on. The PlayStation 5 is substantially more powerful than anything the PlayStation 4 is capable of, and with a remaster of these two titles, we can truly appreciate the added horsepower of the PlayStation 5, and, further down the road, we can appreciate the power of the PC, because that's going to go and perform way better than the PlayStation 5 can as far as this title and future PlayStation titles going to PC anyway. So the upgrades to both games come in the form of adding 3 graphical modes. The first being Fidelity Mode, which gives you 4K resolutions with HDR along with 30 frames per second. The second is Performance Mode, which gives you 1440p resolutions with HDR and 60 frames per second. And the final one is Performance Plus, which gives you 1080p with HDR and 120 frames per second. Fidelity Mode is your native 4K image that offers both titles true 4K and not 4K checkerboarding, which we ran into a lot of that with the PlayStation 4 with the PlayStation 4 Pro console. And what this does is it gives the games substantially better looks and details that are never seen before at the cost of the game only being able to run at the limitation of 30 frames per second. This limitation is seemingly only on the PlayStation 5 version, as I don't believe the PC version will have this issue at all. Given how much action is going on, and after seeing the game running at both 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second, I honestly don't feel people should really play the game at 4K unless they really want to admire the visuals. Performance mode is my preferred method of playing this game, as you not only get 1440p visuals, also known as 2K resolutions, that upscales to 4K checkerboarding, but also are able to play the game at 60 frames per second, offering you the smoothest gameplay for these phenomenal titles. Performance Plus is the last mode available, allowing you to play the game at 1080p, 120 frames per second, should you have a monitor or TV with a high enough refresh rate to support higher frames. Playing this on my Dell 32-inch VA monitor that offers 144 Hz at resolutions up to 1440p, this allowed me to enjoy the higher fluidity of the 120 frames per second at the expense of the noticeably downgraded visuals. Is it the preferred way to play? I mean, honestly, that personally comes down to you, as I personally would say no, because I prefer performance mode with 1440p and 60 frames per second with HDR. And I'm personally fine with 60 frames per second, but again, that's a personal preference. One of the next-gen upgrades to the two titles is the usage of DualSense, and let me tell you, it feels incredible. The way the tension and vibrations are when you're aiming and firing off weapons and the feel of recoil is immersive and dynamic, and to each weapon that you use, you get a very distinct feeling between each one. Now, when it comes to grabbing ledges and climbing, they all have incredible feedback, and the feeling of different terrain when you drive a vehicle, and also the traction is just unreal. It's not a massive selling point for this game, but it's notable at the very least. There's also the 3D audio, which sounds amazing when correctly calibrated, and both games take full advantage of the faster loading times of the PlayStation 5's M.2 SSD, allowing for fast loading and near non-existent loading screens, which was a massive issue if you played the original releases of these two titles. And for those who have completed both games on PlayStation 4, you can import your old saves and pick up right where you left off. If you own the games physically or digitally, then all you will need to do is upgrade your copies of the game for a mere $10. What about the multiplayer mode of the previous releases? Well, you won't find that mode here, as that has been left out of this remaster, and while that is not really much of an issue for me, given that I didn't really play that mode, there are some who I do know who thoroughly enjoyed it, and I feel they will feel it's a shame that it's no longer available. So the TLDR, or Too Long Didn't Read, question for this whole review is Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection worth a purchase? Well, that is a layered question, because if you've never played either title and have already played and enjoyed the first three titles, then yes, this is a worthwhile purchase, which will net you hours upon hours of fun and replay value. If you've already played both games and wanted to see what they look like on your PlayStation 5 with all the additional improvements and performance enhancements, then this is a no-brainer. It is unfortunate that this isn't a free upgrade, as there isn't any new content to be had here, and truthfully speaking, if you take into account they remove the multiplayer mode, you're losing content too, so take that as you will. But it is what it is, for what it is, and for what it is, it's not bad. Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection gives you two of the series' greatest entries with substantial improvements in graphical fidelity and performance, while adding new bells and whistles and tweaks to what are essentially masterpieces of the previous generation. Should you buy it? I mean, if you've already owned them and you just want to spend that $10 and get that upgrade to them, why not? If you've never played them before, I think it's worth the full price. If you've already played them and you're just not interested in the graphical updates or any of the additional bells and whistles, probably not. Ultimately, that decision is down to you, and I leave you with everything we've discussed so far in this review. So, with that being said, that's the review for Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection. Again, thank you to PlayStation for providing the review copy of this game so that I could do this review for you. And if you like this review, make sure you like the video, share it around with someone you think would enjoy it, and sub for more content like this. Also, check us out on MikhailCasanova.com if you prefer written reviews. I've got a whole catalog of reviews for many games I've covered, from AAA to AA to indies and more. Also, if you want to support the content that we do have Patreon on patreon.com/MikhailCasanova, as well as Ko-fi, kofi.com/MikhailCasanova. It gets you early and exclusive access to content I make, from podcasts, interviews, reviews, impressions, reactions, and so much more. So make sure you head on over there if you want to support. If you feel it on your heart to do so, I greatly appreciate it. And if you want to pick up this game, well, I will have links in the description below, affiliate links. No additional cost to you, but it does give a little kickback to me, which goes back into, this whole channel as a whole. So all that being said, I hope you guys had a great day, a great aloha day. And if you haven't, then make sure you go out and have an aloha rest of your day. I'll see you guys in the next one. And yeah, this is fun. And I like my new mic. I'm using my new neat, this is the King B2 mic. So if it sounds a lot clearer, this is why. All right. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace. Mahalo for making it to the end of the video. And if you found anything of importance or substance that you gained from watching this, make sure you leave a comment down in the comment section below. If you haven't already, make sure you sub to the channel and ding the notification bell. That way you stay up to date on all the content that you get from my channel, from podcasts, streams, reviews, impressions, reactions, and so much more. If you want to support what we do have channel memberships. We've got Patreon, we've got Subscribe Star, as well as coffee, which I would love to be drinking some coffee right now, which I am. That's some good coffee. But anyway, we got all of that, and we also have merch on Teespring and TeePublic, so make sure you go check that out. And all that being said, I just hope to see you in the next video that I put out. So hey, see you around.